heads up, this is being recorded. This is our lecture, April 14th, the final portion of Theater Today. Before we get too much further, I just want to touch base, and this is to you guys here, but also to everybody who is taking this class. This Friday is the deadline to select R20 or to select the satisfactory, unsatisfactory grade. So if you have any concerns, I just sent out mass emails to you guys, but if you guys have any concerns, just come talk to me. At this point, you have submitted 5 of the 6 assignments for this class. You will only be graded on 5 assignments. So the plan is to drop your lowest grade. And that is for both Tuesday, Thursday, and that is also for the Friday class. So Tuesday, Thursday, I'm a little more caught up on grading for Tuesday, Thursday. Tuesday, Thursday, you should have everything you've submitted graded except for your theatrical critique number 2. Beyond that, we have one more exam number 3, and that is not open yet, and therefore it cannot be submitted, nor can it be graded. Friday, I am in the process of grading exam number 2 and theatrical critique number 1. My goal is to get those 2 assignments for you graded by April 17th. April 17th is your deadline to submit. And I know that you have already turned in Theater Critique 1 and 2, and you've already completed exams 1 and 2, but they're just taking me a long time to grade. So, as you are looking at your grades, start to take these things into account. If you are really on the fence, you're really worried, and you're like, man, I just need you to grade these things so that I can make a choice, just contact me. And I will put your grades at the top of my list, and I'll make sure they get graded. But my hope is that with everything graded except theatrical critique number 2, that you should start to be able to make a choice as to what you feel like you need. A heads up on exam 3. Just like exam 2 was super dependent on the textbook, exam 3, I expect you to be able to reference your textbook. For exam 3, I will also be referencing videos we may have watched in class. I will also be referencing notes, like things I may have written on the slides. So you will want to have all of your notes available. They will be multiple choice, some short essay. There might be a long essay in there. I haven't decided yet. But exam number 3. So 50% of exam number 3-ish is going to be on everything that we've covered following exam number 2. The other half of exam number 3 is going to be reviewing everything we covered prior to exam number 3, and we'll be looking for a little bit of synthesis there. Okay? So exam number 3 covers the entire class. So you will want to have access to your notes, to your textbook, to the videos, the class lecture videos. If you haven't been watching them, they're archived, so you should be able to go back and see them. You'll probably do better if you go back, if you haven't taken notes, actually handwriting out some notes as you watch the things, and those kind of things. Does that help? Is that clear?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Cool. So yes, clear, and yes, helped. Hooray. Yeah, so if there's any questions, just come talk to me. There are a couple of folks who have disappeared, and I'm going to try to reach out to, if you have not submitted some stuff in a while, I'm probably going to reach out to your email. If I can, I might call you. We'll figure that out. But I'll definitely send out some personal emails if If
And
if I
how long
haven't
would
seen you submit
exam
things in a
3
while.
be?
Can you say that again, Calvin?
How long will exam 3 be open for? How long will you allow us to be able to take exam 3? The usual 3 hours like the first two? Or would it be
Probably.
longer?
It'll depend. If the test seems like it is longer than the other tests, then I may. Has the 3 hours been functional, or has that been a little too short?
It's been functional.
Okay, cool. I mean, if you guys get in there and I'm writing these tests for the first time this semester, so if you get in there and the time I have given you is super unrealistic, come talk to me. We'll figure something out. But my hope is that 3 hours is plenty. That's my hope. But I understand we're all dealing with a new medium, and it's all new and exciting. So if you get in there and you're like, man, this does not work, let me know. We'll figure it out. Does that sound fair?
Yes.
Cool. Yeah. All right. So we're going to talk a little more about theater today. And today we're really talking about finding theater in the U.S. and around the United States. So not just what do we see, but where do we see it? And just to get us started, James and Calvin, where have you guys ever seen a live play? And if so, what are your favorite venues?
I've seen many. Probably the best I've seen was I saw the first day of preview for Beetlejuice the Musical at the Winter Garden Theater in New York.
Oh, fun. Nice.
I would probably say some random shows that Disney Springs put on here and there. There is some high schoolers doing some type of performance dance to something, or musical, or musicals done by high schools and or other groups.
Awesome. So would that be like a school put on, or it was like a community theater, or what do you think?
I would say it varied, probably a little mix of both, because there's been times where it was type of a musical with just watching students just play some form of music on their instruments like cellos, violins, and stuff in front of a crowd of people at Disney Springs.
Nice.
Or watching professional people that plays like a guitar or something to some famously known songs artists I've made over the most recent years.
Nice. All right. So when we think about like where do we see theater, Broadway is usually the venue that comes to mind. So Broadway theater, and this is in New York, or theater in New York. One of the places we see theater in New York is Broadway. So Broadway is the commercial and historical apex of American theater. And at this moment, it refers to 41 theaters within a dozen blocks north of Times Square. So it used to be really specifically looking at this one road, Broadway. But since it's been established, it's actually expanded beyond. And Broadway's doing all right, assuming we get through the coronavirus. The 2016-17 season, which is not yesterday, but is super recent, they recorded Broadway's highest gross income, which was $1.45 billion, and that is $80 million more than the previous season. So Broadway has been bringing in some good money. They're also that same season also had the second highest attendance, So that's 13.27 million people. That is a huge number of people going through these theaters. And the tickets do tend to be somewhat expensive, but what's awesome is that they are made financially accessible. If you want to see a Broadway play, you can see a Broadway play. It's the TKTS booth, and there are a number of these booths where you just stand in line the day of the show, and you can get tickets for as low as half price. And sometimes you are right up front. I know I've gotten last minute tickets where I was in the first row, which maybe not always the best seat, but man, you can see the sweat coming off of the performers, right? So it can be super cool. You can also get tickets half price on websites. And these shows, they're not just living on the Broadway stages, but once they've appeared on Broadway, a lot of times they'll do Broadway tours. So shows that have been on Broadway after they complete their run, specifically in New York, they will tour to theaters in other cities. In fact, we have a theater that houses these tours. Do you guys know where you can see Broadway tours in Orlando?
Dr. Phillips. I usually have a subscription to that.
Absolutely, the Dr. Phillips Center. So we've got some access, which is pretty cool. Now, Broadway used to be the place where new plays originated. It used to be. So what does that mean? What does it mean? A place where new plays originate?
Not sure. I guess the foundation, a play where a play would be founded at, I guess, in a way, or the foundation of the play.
Yeah, you're on the right track, Calvin. How a play can be founded, yeah. James. Oh, you're on mute.
The directors will usually work sometimes with the playwright and the tech crew on an off-Broadway venue, sometimes in New York, but not always, and they'll just workshop it until they feel it's ready, and then they'll pitch it to a theater in New York. Because it's so expensive, they're not going to buy anything that's not super well polished.
Yes. Yeah, and so that's what's happened with Broadway, right? So it used to be a place where new plays were originated, which would mean it would be the first production would be a Broadway production. And that doesn't happen anymore because Broadway is expensive. It's expensive to rent a theater on Broadway. It's expensive to advertise. It's expensive to have people work in those houses. It's just really expensive. So we don't go to Broadway to see completely original things anymore. What Broadway is it's a place where we go to see extravagantly produced musicals. And we go to and really what they're looking for is commercially promising new plays. So if it's commercially promising, what do we think that means?
Hit soundtracks, lots of merchandise, and being able to fill the seats every weekend.
Yes. So we want to make sure that it's got mass appeal. So something that's like super weird and avant-garde. Do you think we're going to go to Broadway to see weird avant-garde stuff? Now, we're probably not. No, because that doesn't necessarily have a mass appeal. But we are going to go to Broadway to see SpongeBob SquarePants the musical. Right? Mass appeal means that we can have that on Broadway because we're going to get a lot of audience members in. A lot of times, we're going to talk a little bit about the chain for a new play getting developed. Broadway is sometimes one of the last places in that how a play gets developed and gets to a larger scale. Broadway gets these new plays from off-Broadway or from top-ranking nonprofit theaters. Broadway's also a place where we're going to see like major revivals from the international dramatic rep. So, for example, we watched a video from a very current adaptation of Oklahoma. That was on Broadway. But Oklahoma is part of the international canon of musical theater, right? So it's reimagined in a totally new way, but it's really essentially a revival. So not new, we're just bringing it back, but we've got a new take on it. And so that's what we're going to see on Broadway in New York. But now we have Broadway, we have off-Broadway, and then we have off-Broadway. So there are at least 200 theaters in New York City that are not a part of Broadway. Oh, wait, I had a video I wanted to show you guys that had to do with Broadway. Let's go find that video. Is this Broadway? No. Are you Broadway? No. We'll watch that later. Come back, Broadway. Where'd you go? It's off-Broadway. That's off-Broadway. Ah. Here we go. This is an example of something we might see on Broadway.
I think the world needs a SpongeBob musical. A character like SpongeBob who has an optimism at his
We're not able to
core.
see
We
it.
need that kind of optimism
can't
right
see it?
now. I think
Oh.
we need that.
No.
that
Okay, I will fix that. Un momento, por favor. Okay, I need a new share. Screen share. Let's just do desktop. There we go. Alright. And we're back. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
A character like SpongeBob who has an optimism at his core.
we need that kind of optimism right now. I think we need that innocence.
We created a story that could have no higher stakes.
I like to think of the story as Our Town meets Armageddon meets SpongeBob.
The score has a huge range of style and scale.
Really, from the outset, every artist has brought their A game.
We're relying completely on the energy and the flavor of the actor's personality. The show is a mashup of so many different disciplines. We have juggling, bicycling, hip-hop, tap, skateboarding, any and everything you could think of.
Capturing the essence of SpongeBob, using materials that are recognizable to people or found objects or things that could float to the bottom of the ocean, and tried to make a big, wonderful underwater world out of those things.
It's gonna feel like the inside of a pinata in there.
The sort of imminent, dangerous mountain on the verge of possibly destroying Bikini Bottom. It manifests in a lot of different ways, and one of that ways is an increasing number and increasing scale of orange balls that sort of become our boulders.
Because of Tina's vision and what the set looks like, it's really inspiring to be able to bring everything to the table.
We are drawing on the biggest pop stars in music today.
Aerosmith,
T.I.,
They might be giants.
Cindy Lauper,
John Legend,
Panic at the Disco.
Lady Antebellum,
Jonathan Colton,
Flaming Lips.
Plain White Tees.
Sarah Bareilles.
she got songs from a lot of people.
It's different characters will come in and sing different, pieces of the song. It could possibly be our greatest song that we've written yet.
The humor in it is a classic. I think it would be the kind of thing people would want to go and see.
If you're gonna do a musical, you want different vignettes into different emotions.
Cause he's just a simple sponge. All I want is the simple life of love.
I wrote BFF Took me just a few days to kind of come up with the concept.
It's SpongeBob as you've never seen him before, and all these characters as you've never seen them before. What is so appealing about SpongeBob to such a broad demographic is that it is appropriate for kids, but there are layers of humor. To have the opportunity to get that Chicago audience, which is such a smart audience, we're gonna learn so much about the show, and we're gonna make a better show.
I'm a fan, dude. This is not like that's made up.
SpongeBob is a presence and a spirit that is here to say, let's have the best day ever.
I'm gonna buy my ticket right now. Oh, wait. I'm in it.
Oh, God.
Great. So this is the kind of thing we end up seeing on Broadway, but
SpongeBob the Musical is the new stage production based on a popular cartoon. Bishop.
Escape. There we go. We have escaped. All right. So now, a little bit about off-Broadway. So off-Broadway, and off-Broadway, they're huge. And in fact, if you're really wanting to see what's going on in American theater, like what's going on the art scene, off-Broadway and off-Broadway is the place to actually get the pulse of what is new and current, beyond the commercial pop culture world. There are 200 theaters. And so if we're looking at, and many of these theaters are professional and semi-professional. So professional means that they're dealing with union actors. They're paying union wages. And semi-professional means that they have some actors who are being paid union wages. And there are some, and not just actors, right? So we're looking at directors and we're looking at designers and stagehands, and all of those folks end up having their own unions, right? The semi-professional theaters, they are hiring some union, and they are hiring some who are working for a wage that is lower than the standard union rate, because they have agreed to. Everybody signs contracts and they're making agreements. So when we're looking at off-Broadway came into use in the 1950s, and it's specifically referring to about 40 to 50 theaters throughout the New York neighborhoods. Now, it originally referred to your distance from the actual Broadway street, but now it's actually starting to refer to seating capacity. So off-Broadway theaters within the New York neighborhoods, if you're 100 to 499 person seating capacity, you're probably going to be considered off-Broadway. And this actually turns into how much it costs to rent. Because seating capacity is going to determine in some way what you can make off of a show. So smaller houses will be able to make less money. I mean, unless you've got exponentially high ticket prices, but in general. So here's an example, and it's from the book, but it sounds awesome. Something that is happening in the off-Broadway world right now. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go. So this is Brobot Johnson. And the thing that makes me super excited about this is that this is a transmedia piece. So do you guys know what transmedia is?
No.
Okay, so transmedia is we're looking at bridging different media to start to tell a story. So Brobot Johnson, you don't get the entire picture unless you participate in all three of the different mediums that he works in. And so when we look at this so it's a transmedia piece written, starring, and directed and composed by Darian Doshan, and it exists in three parts. 3 different mediums, a hip-hop album, so an actual musical album. The album's called Brobot Johnson, Bionic Boom, Bap, Bionic Boom, I can't read it. A science fiction web series, so that's the next medium, a web series. The new adventures of Brobot Johnson. And then finally, it includes a theatrical production, and that one's called The Brobot Johnson Experience. So you don't get the entire story of Brobot Johnson unless you participate in all 3 media experiences. So, and he doesn't have a video of his show. But we do get to see some of these reviews, right? So a celebration of humanity, weird and whimsical, sci-fi hip-hop merriment. And so when we're asking what's going on in artists right now today, transmedia is something that is huge. And transmedia is just looking at how we use media to how we integrate media in theater. My partner did a thesis on it, right? So, and that could mean, do we bring our phones to the theater so that we can see, download an app before you go to the theater and then bring your phone and then you can see things layered on if you're watching through your phone. That's something people are doing right now. It's probably not going to be on the Broadway stage yet, but it's something that artists are playing with and they're kind of working out the kinks. So I recommend you kind of dive into this and kind of look around and see what this is when you get a chance, because it looks really cool. So that's something that's going on in Off-Broadway. And then we also have the public. What's the public theater doing right now? So the public theater fits in a couple of categories. I don't want video, actually. I do want the public theater. So the public theater is an institution, and it's actually located in Brooklyn, which is one of the New York neighborhoods. Do they have anything? And so here is a quick behind the scenes at the public theater. And this is an example of an off-Broadway house. Now the public theater, they have a lot of venues. They're just smaller than 500. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Yes.
The public theater is of, by, and for the people. We've got 5 theaters at 425 Lafayette in addition to Joe's Pub, the Delacourt Theater in Central Park with our mobile unit productions, and on Broadway and around the world, we put on hundreds of shows for hundreds of thousands of people a year. It takes an incredibly hardworking army of artists, designers, administrators, and production people to make all of this happen.
The people who come here not just because they believe in the work, but because of the sense of community here in the shop and in this building.
Creating posters for a show feels like being an advocate visually for the artist and the deep soulish meaning of the piece. I never make things pretty. I make them powerful.
The public is exactly that, a place of public individuals with different mindsets, life experiences, and we all come together under one roof and make some incredible art.
Our technicians consider themselves artists, and the public theater, as a technician, is known to be one of the premier places to work because of the quality of work that gets put on and the amount of shows that we do here.
No 2 days are ever exactly alike. It's always a surprise. It's always full of excitement. The amount that we do is an awful lot. To stay exciting, we have to keep pushing the boundaries of what we're doing.
in any given season. You get to work in so many different worlds and such a variety of things and tell so many different stories. That's the challenge, that's the fun.
Being the Master Writer Chair at the Public, it's a great honor, and I take it very seriously. I mean, I've been doing plays here since, I think, 1994. When you are at home, you unpack, and I've been unpacking.
You know, it's always a difficult thing trying to balance the work I have to do supporting the artistry of others when I'm in the room working as an artist myself. When I'm in rehearsal, I get considerably more humble than I usually am. I get more patience, I get more empathy, and I think those are incredibly important qualities that I have to have as a producer when I'm working on other people's plays.
There's so much amazing work happening at 425 Lafayette Street, but the mobile unit takes the Public Theater's mission beyond those four walls and brings it out to the people of New York City. We have so much fun and we work so hard and we meet so many great people on the road too, and I love it.
The public work community is one of the most joyful communities I've ever worked with. New York City is a hard place sometimes to find your people, and I feel like we've really found this space where we can be there for each other.
I like to do a lot of my refining as a writer during table work. Every time I can hear a section of the play, I learn more about it. And I really do think that this is one of the only theaters in New York that could take this material on simply because of the size of it.
When I think of the premier off-Broadway house in New York, that is the Public Theater. And so when I think about wanting to bring people to Flint who would otherwise not pay attention to the current water crisis there, this has the greatest reach. And so I am interested in maximizing the impact of the story so that we can maximize the national mobilization around Flint.
Public is an amazing institution that allows so much freedom for an artist. You spend a lot of time as a writer trying to find your voice, and I think this is the play where I'm like, I've captured my voice. It's surreal. I don't know what's gonna happen, but we're making something really special.
The Public Theater is always growing, and we will continue to produce and develop new shows. All of this, all of what we do, would not be possible without the support of the artists, the staff, and our audience and philanthropic supporters.
All right. So, what do you think this theater is like? I mean, clearly this was it's a produced, please see how wonderful we are kind of a thing, but what do you guys think?
It's really cool to see all of the back of house offices, not even just the people who are directly involved, but the people who help market and like just make the stagecraft stuff in the back. But it seems like since they do so many plays a year, it's an opportunity for a lot of people to experiment with different types of plays because they don't have to commit to a long run time. Or even a large audience. So it seems like it's full of very creative people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's really, they focus on a lot of new work. And they're there to support their artists in developing that work. Yeah. And it's not even just the first time it's been seen sometimes, but it's a lot of times it's works that are being workshopped and are in progress. Yeah. I love the Public Theater. It makes me happy. It's a good place. So that is an example of an off-Broadway theater. And then we also have off-Broadway. So
what do you mean by off-Broadway?
Say that again?
I said, what do you mean by off-Broadway?
So off-Broadway, we're looking at theaters that are between 100 and 499 seats. Off-Broadway are even smaller. So you're looking at less than 100 seats. And this term came into use in the 1960s. So it's also tends to be semi-professional or amateur theater companies, but we're still looking at New York. We're still looking at artists that are professionals in their own right, but maybe don't have the same amount of money or the prestige behind their name. So perhaps earlier in their career, or just not as well known, or any of those things, right? But semi-professional still means that some people are getting paid union rates. These off-Broadway theaters, sometimes those are going to be like YMCAs and coffee houses. Sometimes they'll be venues that feel like traditional theaters. But off-Broadway is where you're really going to find the stuff that's experimental and the stuff that's really pushing boundaries. While they might love to sell tickets, this is really the place where people make work to say a thing. So really pushing boundaries. Now, one of the other things you see in the off-Broadway category is you see showcases. And this is something that the union does participate in. This is a place where you can go to see professional, like equity union actors perform for a rate that is lower than what the union rate is. And the purpose of showcases is to be able to be seen, to maybe get a good review so that you can build your reputation. So there's a lot of reasons that there are union showcases, but these are going to be considered smaller venues, off-Broadway, stuff like that. And these showcases are pretty common. So when we leave Broadway, we still have a ton of theater happening in the United States. The regional American theater system is huge. There wasn't a whole lot of professional theater happening outside of New York before 1950, but in 1950, the Arena Stage was founded in D.C., and following that, in the following 15 years, a number of regional theaters popped up around the United States, and now we have more than 500 professional theaters, and almost every state has one or more of these. These regional theaters are nonprofit. So do you guys know what being a nonprofit means?
That you don't make. I believe it's more of you don't really make a profit off of stuff you make, but the money goes towards something else, like maybe people in need or towards other services required for something.
Yeah. And so essentially, the thought is that theater is really expensive to produce. And theater is considered to have cultural value, societal and cultural value. And sometimes theater costs more to make than people will pay to see it. And yet we believe that it is important for theater to be around and for it to be good. And so a nonprofit means that this is a business that is not necessarily intended to make a profit, but it is intended for another purpose. And so sometimes that purpose is feeding the homeless or funding research towards certain medical kinds of things, and sometimes it is making art and theater and things like that. So most of these regional theaters are nonprofits because they cost more to operate than the theater can make in revenue through ticket sales. And they make up the balance of that through grants, and those grants sometimes come from independent foundations, sometimes those grants come from the government, and through private donors. And the money that they get through government funding, they track it very, very carefully. So anything that you get, you report back on to the penny. So it's a lot of work that goes into that money. But these theaters produce more than 2,000 productions across the country every year. And in fact, the regional theater system is considered so important that there is a Tony Award for regional theaters. And they vary hugely in their size and in their focus. Some regional theaters have just one little theater and they can house maybe 100 audience members per show. Some of these theaters can house Orlando Shakespeare Theater or the Orlando Repertory Theater, for example. The Orlando Repertory Theater is a theater that we have right here that is a regional American theater. They focus on children's theater. And they have 3 stages or 4? They have 3 major stages. And their stages house, I think you can get 300 people in the Universal stage and in the other venue. And then they have a smaller one that houses a bit less than 100, the Tupperware Theater. And so that's an example right here in Orlando of a regional theater. With a varied focus. They're focusing on children's theater. But they have a robust season. They produce a number of shows every year. And they also have educational outreach. So there's a lot going on there. Here is a video of the Arena Stage. Because the Arena Stage, they're mentioning as one of the first. So let's see if we can find it. Here we go. And this is 13 minutes. We will not watch all 13 minutes.
Before Arena, there was very little theater happening except for the Little Theater movement in communities all over the country. Really, you had to go to New York or there were touring companies. And Zelda Fitzchandler and 2 other women in Texas really started the resident theater movement. It now has, in the not-for-profit resident theater movement, I believe around 1,900 theaters operating all over the United States. So one of the reasons why I've always loved Arena Stage is because I think of Arena as the mothership and one of the first creators of this movement. I think it's why theater companies outside of New York are the ones most likely to be producing and creating Pulitzer Prize-winning plays. Arena has a series of firsts that probably is unmatched in the country. It was the first theater to take a play behind the Iron Curtain. It was the first theater to have Monday night readings, so we can bless or curse the theater for that phenomena. It was the first theater to have an endowment, the first theater to be racially integrated here in Washington, D.C. It was the first theater to have a production go to Broadway, and that was A Great White Hope with Jane Alexander. And it was the first theater to receive the Regional Tony Award. When I was a student here in Washington, D.C., in the early 70s, I had a mini season ticket to come to Arena Stage. So I studied everything that Zelda Fitzchandler did here. I started a theater in Alaska called Perseverance Theater, which I began in 1979, and I came here to be artistic director of Arena Stage in 1998. I was surprised at what had happened to the theater structure since I had been a student in the 70s. I found the physical plant neglected, falling apart in places, and it was really clear that Arena needed to do something bold. I really wanted a new theater focused on new American work. In our discussions with the architects, I began talking about this idea of a cradle. And people kept saying to me, it's a black box. And I said, no, I actually am not interested in black boxes. I don't think black boxes actually work. And so at one point, the architect came in and he said, I think you really are talking about something that is like a Richard Serra sculpture that would go around and around and around. And I thought that was a beautiful idea. It's called the Kogod Cradle because someone mentioned at a certain point, oh my God, you're talking about a cradle for new work. I was very interested to have everything under one roof. So for the first time in its history, everything from education, shops, rehearsal halls, admin, all of our production staff, everything is under one roof. Because I think when everything is under one roof, you also have an electrical charge that goes through the building.
All right, and so you guys can watch more of this on your own if you like. But this is just an example. So what do you guys think? Arena stage. How's that striking you?
Interesting on how the thought process went into building this unique new place to hold theater, yet also a new innovative way of looking how to make plays and have various different departments under one roof where it seems like everybody can be more in sync with one another in regards to what goes on, what goes into creating a great play, a fantastic play at this arena.
Mm-hmm.
The calling it a cradle for new work is a pretty powerful image as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. What I like about that video is it kind of reinforces Arena Stage's role in kind of establishing the regional theater system. And now this is something that exists throughout. I'm going to bring up, just real quick, just so that we have a reference of what's going on in our community.
Orlando Rep is the one right next to the Museum of Art, isn't it?
Yes, so it's all in Lock Haven Park. There's the Orlando Shakespeare Theater, the Orlando Repertory Theater. And the Orlando Shakespeare Theater is part of the kind of borderlines a couple different categories we're going to talk about. But I would argue that the Orlando Shakespeare Theater is a repertory theater. And these are all in Lock Haven Park. So that's, was it 1792 and between Orlando, it's near the hospital, between Orlando and Winter Park on 1792. And what's really cool is the Orlando Repertory Theater started as a community theater. And then they grew. So you can read about their history here. They started as the Orlando Civic Theater. Or the Central Florida Civic Theater. So that's pretty cool. A little bit of local stuff. Now we also have Shakespeare festivals, and this is something pretty cool. So during the Great Depression, in the 30s, that depression, we started to have summer stock festivals that would happen, and these summer stock festivals were a chance for Sometimes they were community theater, sometimes there were professional theaters. But they would get together over the summer and they would put on a series of a couple of plays. Very often these plays happened outdoors. You're looking at primarily outdoor theater. You're looking at a number of shows. A lot of times you're looking at the same players. The same actors are going to play a number of different roles. Sometimes they would do a different play every night. So you've got the same actors, but maybe I'm a sword handler in the first play, but then I'm a lead role in the second play. And so you're dealing with this. Usually, and so now these Shakespeare festivals have grown into large theaters themselves that have fully produced seasons. And so what you see now in these fully produced seasons is a Shakespeare festival theater will have 2 to 4 Shakespearean productions per season. And they flesh out the rest of the season with more contemporary works. In a traditional Shakespearean festival, the Shakespearean plays are often performed outdoors. So we also, in Orlando, have a Shakespeare festival. The Orlando Shakespeare Festival. So let's see. Let me pull it up for you. Shakespeare. Orlando Shakes. And so this is also in Lock Haven Park, so it's just across the park from the Orlando Repertory Theater. And you can learn a little bit about them right here. So the Orlando Shakes, it's a staple of Orlando theater. And one of the first Shakespeare festivals, or one of the ones that's really gotten biggest, is Oregon Shakes. So we've got a quick introductory video to Oregon Shakespeare Theater. Now, mind you, the videos that we are watching are the videos of the festivals that are the biggest. And just because they're the biggest, it doesn't mean that the smaller festivals are not as good or are not doing work that is of that same quality. We're just watching. The big ones have the money to make cool videos about what they do. So here we go.
In the foothills of Southern Oregon, you'll find a hamlet in the city of Ashland, the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, the largest repertory theater in the U.S. It's a place where, if you listen closely, you can almost hear the bard's words from Twelfth Night. Be not afraid of greatness. Some are born great.
So much talent, so much fun, so much good work, good writing.
Some achieve greatness.
And I just thought, people do this for a living?
And some
we have made great strides.
Have greatness.
There's simply no experience like it
Thrust upon them.
You can't ask for any better history than that from an organization.
It was 1935. At Southern Oregon Normal School, Angus Livingston Bomer was that English teacher. He loved Shakespeare. That summer, Angus hatched a plan to share that love. With the city's support, he organized a small festival, 2 plays, Twelfth Night and The Merchant of Venice. Angus played Shylock. He transformed the abandoned Chautauqua stage in Lithia Park into an Elizabethan-style theater. That 4th of July weekend, the Oregon Shakespeare Festival was born. Now in its 85th year, the Oregon Historical Society honors OSF with its Oregon History Makers Medal.
That's the picture I had in my head. It is
humbling, and it makes me so proud to have this award be given to us in my inaugural year.
Nataki Garrett is just the 6th artistic director in OSF history.
I am a part of a legacy.
She's the first African American and only the 2nd woman to take the helm.
From the very beginning of Oregon Shakespeare Festival, there's been this idea of moving forward. My plan for OSF to continue to make history is to grow our infrastructure, to continue to evolve our commissioning projects, to deepen our relationship with Shakespeare, and to look for ways to reach out beyond our walls.
Be it newly commissioned work or one of Shakespeare's classics, at OSF you will always see a celebration of diversity and inclusion, both core values here.
You have to reach out and broaden, people's perspectives and new audiences.
Actor Kevin Kennerly is in his 24th season with OSF.
I love Shakespeare. I love poetry, and the opportunity to be able to speak Shakespeare and not think about the fact that I am an African American, speaking this language was exciting to me. So I got a chance to play Romeo in places where I probably wouldn't have played Romeo. The fact that so many other people are represented that you would not normally see in such an environment is exciting.
I don't know of any theater right now that could offer that kind of experience.
This is Vilma Silva's 25th season.
There's just the plain thrill of being someone else.
And for some, there's the thrill of discovering what they never realized existed in their English lit class.
Don't be afraid of Shakespeare. Sometimes we're afraid of it.
It's one thing to read it.
It's another to perform it. Experience it. It reads stale on the page, but I think you can bring life to these words.
To see it come to life, it was obviously transformational.
Kimberly Berry saw her first play here as a teen. Shortly after, she moved to Ashland to build a career at OSF. She just retired after 35 years with the company, most recently as a stage manager. Now she manages the Backstage Tour program.
They can't believe this astonishing professional company is in little tiny Southern Oregon, and it's just a tribute to Angus Bomer's beautiful dream that if you bring these Shakespeare stories and other stories to life, people will come here and enjoy it, and indeed they do.
Every year, somewhere between 400,000 and 500,000 people buy tickets to see a play here. The company employs 100 actors and 500 staff members. Most actors appear in multiple plays in a season. This year, Christopher Jean is in All's Well That Ends Well and Alice in Wonderland.
I played the Dormouse, Caterpillar Legs, Rabbit Hole number 4.
Christopher remembers seeing Alice in Wonderland when he was 6.
I was blown away. So tonight we'll come, it may be raining, I'll be grumpy, and then I'll hear a child laugh right before we start. I'll be like, that's why I'm here. And I hope that it will inspire them to keep the generosity and spirit and community of theater alive.
In the Allen Elizabethan Theater, that spirit of generosity comes from many places, including the late Paul Allen. He and his sister would see plays here as kids. From the Paul G. Allen Family Foundation to individual donations and ticket
All right.
sales, it all keeps the nonprofit Oregon Shakespeare Festival alive.
Broadway is commercial. Wall Street basically is a part of what helps make Broadway run. We don't have that.
May yet enkindle you into the crowd.
What they do have is drive and the desire to reach anyone who'd lend them their ears, eyes, and hearts.
Shakespeare was a populist. He wrote plays for the people. Racism, sexism, classism. I mean, all of it. It's, and he takes them all and he throws them back at you.
And after 400 years,
It's amazing how little things have changed.
Shakespeare's plays are as fresh as ever.
Kevin, could you favor us with a line from your
From Romeo
You put me on the spot. Now I actually have to think about it.
to the villainous Aaron the Moor, it's clear.
Even now I curse the day.
All the world truly is a stage when you're here.
Oh, I've done 1,000 dreadful things as willingly as one might kill a fly. And nothing grieves me more heartily indeed, but that I cannot do 10,000 more.
That's a bad man.
He's a bad man. He's a bad.
All right. So, a little bit about the Oregon Shakespeare. So, does that seem like it's the same as Arena Stage or the same as the Public Theater, or is it different?
It seems like it's a little different, but at the
Yeah.
same time, the same as an arena or the other type of stage.
So what's the difference?
I would say the difference would be the uniqueness or style. I'm not exactly sure how to explain it besides the way they're working at sort of putting a different twist at their style of artwork.
Yeah, they're all driven by mission statements, and they're all looking at their history, and they're looking at how they started and why they started, and they're focused on different kinds of things. Yeah, the Oregon Shakes Fest isn't necessarily focused on developing new work, although they do. They're really focused on their root in Shakespeare, and then everything blossoms from that. But did you hear a lot of the stuff that happens with Summer Stock, right? You've got a crew of actors. They play multiple roles in multiple different plays. They're doing children's theater and adult theater and Shakespeare and all of those things. So beyond these festivals, we also have summer and dinner theater. Now, summer theater and dinner theaters, they're kind of petering out. A lot of the theaters that are really, we still have festivals. Like there's a festival called the Co-Fest, which is in Massachusetts, and that's a summer festival that is focused on new work, and it's super tiny. But summer theaters and dinner theaters would offer you a night on the town. So you could do dinner and a show. You watch the show either after you eat dinner or you eat dinner at intermission. So there's a little bit of eating and watching all at the same time. And usually what you would see at a dinner theater would be a light comedy or a mystery melodrama, some small productions of Broadway musicals. And these have kind of petered out in their popularity, but they still do exist. And there are some notable summer theaters left. And a lot of the summer theaters, what would happen is the folks who are in New York, the performers in New York, would want to get out of the city, to get out of the heat. And so they'd go to some cooler spaces. So Williamstown Theater Festival in Massachusetts is a really great example of a summer theater that is still flourishing and still robust. And
Kinda
beyond
like-
that, yeah?
Kind of like with medieval time or Al Capone, the Al Capone dinner shows that's here in Florida, or
Yes.
various other dinner shows here in Florida.
Yes, absolutely. All of the dinner shows that we have here in Orlando are absolutely dinner theater. You have food that goes along with the theme. You see a story play out. Yes, absolutely, Calvin. Nice. Good call. And then beyond that, we have amateur theater. And amateur theater, you're looking at the academy, and you're also looking at community theater. So educational theater is a huge thing. Right now, in the United States, more than 1,000 colleges and universities have theater departments that offer degrees in theater. And more than another 1,000 colleges put on plays or offer classes in theater, even if they don't offer a degree. And then beyond that, you're looking at several thousand high schools, summer camps, private schools that are producing shows every year. So what are some reasons, even if I don't want to be a professional actor, what are some reasons that I might want to participate in theater? What do you guys think?
Expressing yourself.
Self-expression, yes. What do I learn from being in a play? What do you think?
Communication and public speaking.
Yeah. So I can learn everything from etiquette to how to analyze a dramatic piece of literature. I I can learn about history through being in a play. Like, there are all sorts of things that we learn through performing theater. There are people who learn English or learn other languages by performing in plays, using those languages. So many educational institutions offer produce theater for educational purposes. What's really interesting about what happens in colleges is that there are many people who are trained in theater, who have college degrees in theater, and then we turn into having a close relationship with a lot of the local theaters and with the educational theater. So, for example, I have a Master of Fine Arts in Contemporary Theater. Today, I direct shows here at Valencia, but I also direct shows at Mad Cow Theater, which is one of our regional theaters. I directed an opera for Opera Orlando, which is a regional opera company. So I'm working professionally, but I am also working within the academic theater. And so you get people who have a really interesting skill set. And then we have community theaters. So community theaters are amateur groups who put on plays for their own enjoyment. And it's one of the places that a lot of folks get introduced to theater. The reason I am in theater at all is my mother forced me to audition for the musical Oliver in my hometown. And it was directed by a guy named David Frankel. And he was a professor at USF. He was a theater professor. Actually, then I think he was a professor at St. Leo, which was right in our community. And at that point, I didn't know I was going to go professionally into theater. At that point, it was nice people, and it was fun to sing, and it was fun, right? So there are a ton of amateur groups who put on plays just for fun, because they like the people, they like the work. And so that is what's happening in the United States. There's a lot more happening throughout the world. Global theater transcends local ideologies. We don't have time to talk about it, but I will probably in the tests ask questions about it. And what's beautiful is you have a textbook. So things that I might ask is, what is the difference between the main theater in England and then one of the main theaters in France, or something like that. So just take a look at your textbook. It's all right here. We also have some really fantastic contemporary theater innovators. I will ask you questions about these guys. Ivo van Hove. Oh, so cool. Jesusa Rodriguez, Rimini Protocol, On Keng Sen. I will, on the test, ask questions about that. And if I can find some, I'll post some videos of some of their work. Perhaps that'll be in the test. We'll see. But take a look at it, because there is just awesome stuff happening. Like, the things that are happening in theater right now are just really rad. And so weird and so cool, and are saying such fresh, important, fantastic things. Yeah, it's just cool. So I'm gonna ask you about it because it's cool. But beyond that, right here in the United States, there are tons of ways to see theater. And I hope that once we are able to be in public spaces together again, that you guys will go out and see some stuff. All right, so this is going to be the last lecture before you have a test. I will show up at 4 o'clock next class, but I will show up simply to answer questions and be a resource. The test will not be written by then. I'm going to write it over the weekend or probably Monday. because between now and Friday, I'm going to be grading. If you have questions about grades, please reach out. You guys, I hope that I have been accessible, and I am accessible, damn it. So please reach out. My goal is for you to feel like you have learned stuff, and my goal is to feel like you have been able to earn the grade that you feel you deserve. So talk to me. All right. So that's what I've got. Questions, concerns, revelations. Anything?
I feel good about everything so far.
Awesome. Great. You feeling okay, Calvin?
Yes.
At this point, you guys are the voices for the class, so huzzah. If Calvin and James are good, everybody's good. Cool. Hey, you guys, it's been a joy.
Okay.
Professor.
Yeah. I may see you guys next week, and if not, I hope that you, I'm looking forward to reading your, the rest of your essays, and I'm looking forward to seeing your work on the test.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Bye.